another round of applause to the governor of the great state of Minnesota.
Applause for all the teams from the great city of Rochester.
All right.
We're just here to continue to help the whole state.
Got a wonderful city, and Byron too. I was at the VFW or the Legion, which is there in Byron. I was at a dinner there a year and a half ago. In fact, I was on the wait staff, and then they had me be the auctioneer. So, well, you know, I always get a little nervous speaking to a group of students like you, because back when my two sons were your age and I got them to agree that they'd come here, listen to me give a speech, when I came out on Saturday morning and they didn't want to go, and I said, come on, you promised you'd go. And my son Andrew, who was about your age, looked at me very serious and said, Dad, I really don't want to go. I heard you speak once, and Dad, you were really boring. So I'd probably be less boring than if I just answer your questions, but I'm really glad you're here. This is the governor's reception room. You can see there are a number of murals. They were painted at about the time of the 50th anniversary of the Civil War, so 5 of the 7 murals, including the one out in the reception area, are Civil War dated pieces, but you know, it's still, I think, a fabulous room, and this is your capital, as much as mine or anybody else's, and the fact that you're here today shows your interest in government, and I think that's tremendous, and so I'm glad to answer whatever questions you have, or get any suggestions or good advice I could get, too.
So I know they have questions.
Always, the first person to ask questions is the bravest person in the room. Yeah, right.
If you're opposed to having a photo ID in order to vote to help minorities, why do we have an unequal distribution of integration funds that help minorities become more educated and learn how to be more productive citizens? We live in Minnesota, one of the greatest diverse groups of people in the country. I believe if you cut the this is how unequal it is, diversity programs will not only will we lose voters, crime rates will go up.
One question here, one's about voter ID, and the other is about diversity money for diversity?
Unequal distribution of integration of funds.
Integration funds.
Yeah. Well, in terms of voter ID, I vetoed the bill last year for the same reasons I said in my veto letter that Governor Plenty, who was a Republican when there was a DFL legislature, vetoed a change in election law a couple of years before, because it was just one party's votes. It was not bipartisan. And Governor Plenty said, I agree with him, that one party should not be changing election law. It has to be both parties it's in the best interest of everybody. Well, now, since the governor doesn't have a veto over a constitutional amendment, now they're looking at putting it on the ballot for the people of Minnesota to decide in November, so that may be the outcome. In terms of the integration, if I understand your question, I mean, there's both the existing integration aid, and that's distributed by a formula that some people think is fair and some is unfair. If I understand your question, it's why should we be spending money, additional money to help young people who are recently in this country and need that additional educational support in order to be successful. And I would just say, if all of you are successful, and all of your peers here in Minnesota across the country, then our country will be successful. If only half of you are successful and half of the rest are successful, even those of you who are successful are going to have a really rough time of it. If even just 85% of you are successful and 10% are out of work and 5% are in prison, it's going to be a rough time for everybody. So I think everybody has a stake in everybody's success. And I don't worry about any of you, because I look around, you're very intelligent. The fact that here at this age, when I was thinking about hockey and nothing much else, it's impressive. And it shows that you're on a good track to success. But your success will be interconnected with that of other people. So we need everybody to succeed. And so whatever we can best ways we can do that, I think will benefit everybody. Good question, good for you. Yeah?
Oh, me?
Yes?
How long have you been covering here?
I took office January 3rd of last year, so just a little over a year. A four-year term. Yeah?
So my child left behind is just exempted, but Minnesota's just exempted from that, right?
We got a waiver from it, so we're not tied to the strictest terms of it.
So do you have any new plans for education reform?
We do. I think what we want is the flexibility so that we're not, having. I heard so many teachers that are teaching to the test, and half the school year is memorizing, what they think they need to, do well on the test. And I was a teacher myself for 2 years right out of college, and you want to make the course interesting so that young people like yourselves will like, be interested in the subject, will want to learn, and will develop confidence in your ability to learn. It's not about rote memorization of some factoids that you've been put in multiple choice tests. So, and it's not even a good predictor in a lot of cases of proficiency or advancement. So we want to start with early childhood. We want to start with very young children who need additional support for the families, and start there, and then optional all-day kindergarten. But we're one of the relatively few states that doesn't have state support for all-day kindergarten. We need to improve our K-12 system. There's a public school in Rochester I visited last year where they have the year-round program, and that's really really important. I think at least the principals said, especially for kids who won't have those kind of experiences during a long summer. So that's important. And then we need to make our college and universities make sure we're giving you the courses you need for the jobs of the future and not the jobs of the past. So I think that there's a whole continuum, and we need to take what we have now and improve it, because if you get a good education, you will be successful for the rest of your life. If you don't get a good education, or if you drop out of school, you're going to have a tough time getting any more than minimum wage jobs. So stay in school and learn all you can, and that's your ticket to success. Yes?
Oh, you point at her.
Oh, okay.
I'll go. Okay, when did you know you wanted to become governor?
I grew up in a business family, a Republican family. My parents voted, but they didn't really, we didn't talk much about politics. I was actually pre-med in college. I worked 3 summers in high school at a hospital in Minneapolis, and I was really interested in that. So it sort of was just over time. I got involved in teaching, and then I worked for a social agency in Boston, and that got me interested sort of in the social issues of the time. And I was actively involved in opposing the Vietnam War. So that kind of got me politically interested, and seeing government as a place to try to make a difference for people's lives. So I sort of slid back into it that way. And I think as Governor Ventura has shown, being a former professional wrestler, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Governor of California, former actor, and in the U.S. Senate when I was there, we had 2 veterinarians, 1 auctioneer, cattle broker. So, any career path can lead to public office. So young people say to me, well, what should I do I think I might want to run in the future. I say, do what interests you now, and get as much real-world experience as you can. But anything will benefit you if you might as well do what motivates you. Yeah.
Okay, what are your views on Occupy Wall Street?
I think they've got a legitimate complaint about the concentration of wealth and power, and the abuse of that in terms of the financial crisis that afflicted this country, the fact that the banks still don't have the liquidity to own money or aren't owning money and so forth. So I don't think they have a real game plan, and it wasn't ever clear what they were, where they wanted to go.
Yeah,
when we I was very active, as I said, in the anti-Vietnam War movement. Our goal was to stop the war, end the war. So I mean, you had a sense of where you wanted to go. I don't think see that.
Do you think that the action that was taken as far as the police and authority, do you think that was necessary?
Well, it varied from place to place, but the First Amendment is so critical to our freedoms in our society. I mean, that's the right to gather peacefully, address grievances, and so it has to be lawful. It has to, can't prevent other people from getting to work or you know, doing what they're doing, but if it's legal and it's within, you know, responsible confines, then I think they have a right to be doing it, absolutely. Yes?
Why is it that the performing arts is cut from the school?
Because the school funding has been cut. It's a very good point. It's really tragic. The school funding has been cut over the last decade. Now we changed that this year and next year to start the first increases since 2003. So these school board members have just impossible decisions to make. Well, you cut this or you cut that. You got to cut one or you got to cut the other. And it's, you know, it's very, very unfortunate because, you know, finding out, you know, what your interests are, whether it's in theater or whether it's in debate or whether it's in chess or whether it's in whatever it is you know, part of, you know, especially at your age, finding out what interests you in life. So every time something has to be excluded, it just restricts your options, which is very unfortunate. Yes?
Going off of you caring about social issues, specifically the Vietnam War, what are your views on human trafficking and how are you going to fight it?
Well, I think it's horrible. And, you know, our Commissioner of Public Safety, Ramona Doman, who's the former Chief of Police in Maple Grove, is spearheading that effort. You know, we are part of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, are part with local law enforcement, and we're going up with the FBI and the federal government, which has the broadest responsibility. But it's, you know, it's like whatever can we do? You know, whatever we can do is proven effective. But it's a national disgrace. Yes.
Who and what inspired you to be what you are today? To be the person?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, I was pre-med in college, and then started to get aware of the world around me in my sophomore year in college, and then my junior year was the 1968 presidential election, and my first political hero was Robert Kennedy, who was running for president then. And so I got home from college in June of 1968, and there was the California primary, presidential primary, and I was watching my parents' basement of their house in Long Lake, and my parents didn't like the Kennedy, so they'd gone to bed, so I was watching by myself, and he won the primary, and he gave a speech at the hotel ballroom, and finished and said, and now it's on to Chicago, where the National Convention was going to be a month later, and I was reaching forward to turn off the TV, and suddenly there he was lying in a pool of blood, and murdered. And there's something about seeing him, my hero, die for the causes he believed in. It just lit a spark. I could just never be comfortable, being comfortable with my parents, comfortable home again. So that really launched my path, and I couldn't have ever predicted back then that I would end up, you know, where I'm in the Senate and governor. I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have those opportunities. But I knew all along that what I wanted to do was, you know, public service and try to make, sounds trite but true, and try to make the world a better place for my children, my grandchildren, all of you. Yeah.
Well, recently on the national and the state level, there's been a lot of conflict between Democrats and Republicans, and things really not getting done. And what do you feel is the role of the governor in that situation?
Well, to try to find common ground, but it takes two to tango, as they say. You know, compromise. Henry Clay, statesman back in the 1800s, said, you know, compromise is the cement of democracy. It's what, you know, people with different points of view hold on to those views, but you have to reach some agreements in order to be able to, you know, move ahead. And so compromise, you know, some people think now it's a weakness and rather than a strength, and being intransigent and unwilling to concede anything is a strength rather than a weakness. So the governor, I think, has got to try to be, you know, kind of one of the advocates for compromise and lead by example, which is why last year I offered, you know, meet halfway on the budget, and they decided they didn't want to meet halfway. So I mean, you know, there's a role for partisanship, and then there's a way in which you got to say at the end of it, you know, I'm not going to give up what I believe in, but I'm going to come to, you know, find common ground so we can move ahead. And that's what seems to be lacking here and also in Washington. Yeah. You guys have excellent questions. Boy, this is really well informed. I'm really impressed.
Why do you think people are losing faith in the government?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think people are losing faith in the government?
Well, Winston Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst of all forms of government, except for all the rest. I've been in and around government now for 36 years. And a lot of the problems of government are the problems of the human race. Greed, there's fear, there's heroism, there's wisdom, there's pettiness. I mean, it's just, so somebody once said, if you just take all the people out of government, then it works just fine. So, it's hard to separate, the kind of problems you see every day in our society. People getting along, people working things out, people resolving their differences peacefully, constructively. Government being the same as being people is part of it. And I think also, our problems are very, very complex. I can listen to experts, really well-informed experts who are exactly the opposite view of the subject. If I want to do the right thing, I'm still left, wondering what's the right thing to do. And I think as these problems have become more complicated, more complex, it's hard to keep track of them. Even if you get paid to do that full time, it's just if you're a citizen who's got a job and who's got a little bit of time to tune in what's going on. So, what do you think? Oh, okay. Yes.
Have you considered dealing with the issue of districting for schools in our state? How like we find that our schools like that really affluent communities can pay more per student, whereas inner city children won't get the same kind of funding because of that isolation?
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court of Minnesota ruled 40 years ago that depending on property taxes to fund our schools was unconstitutional because it was inherently unequal. And so the state part, which should come from a progressive income tax where everybody pays in, and that should be the principal source so that every school, every student gets the same amount. And that, it was expanded then, and now it's being contracted. And as I said, in the last 10 years, the state support for K-12 education per student has been cut by 14%. And so the property goes on the property taxes, so the citizens who vote for a referendum, that school benefits, and the ones who vote against those students are penalized. It's very unfair. And so we increased the per pupil formula $50 for this year per student, another $50 for next year. That's about $128 million increase. So we're starting to go in the right direction, but there's a lot more we need to do. Yeah.
This isn't really a question, and I'm not sure that you hear this enough, but on behalf of the Rochester Students for Education Funding, we came up here today along with Kings on Tour to talk to representatives about our perspective on education, how we think things are going. And I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work, working towards a better student education, working through dividing government, and working for us.
Thank you. What is your perspective and how are things going?
I think, definitely division in government. Things have been sort of at a standstill, but definitely I think things are getting better. We're compromising a little more. As you know, even on the national level, we're compromising more with the payroll taxes.
Good for you.
So.
You've been on that. You had a chance. Go ahead and ask the question. Yeah.
Okay, you stressed the importance of education. How are you going to deal with bullying?
We have set up a governor's task force on bullying. We've got some of the best experts in the state to really focus on that and tell us in about 3 or 4 months what should we do, what can we best do as a state, and how can we encourage each school district, each city, county. I remember when about 1990 or so in Rochester, there were a couple of Somali youth who were doing a mail route, and they were beaten by some white youth. And I remember going down and meet with them in Rochester and Hatfield, yeah. And they started something in Rochester called Not in Our Town. And there's a whole year of civic education that was supported by businesses and other groups, and there's really an ongoing education for citizens of all ages. Not in Rochester. We're better than this. We're not going to want to let this happen. And it made a real difference. And so I'd like to have something. It's not in our state. Not here. Not in Minnesota. We're better than that. And whatever moral authority I can bring to that, I certainly intend to do so. Yes.
What are some of the improvements you made towards bullying and hazing?
I'm sorry?
What are some of the improvements you made towards
don't think we've made any yet, because again, I think we're looking for the ideas and from the experts, but we will. If you ask me that question a year from now, we'll have some good answers. What I've done, you know, when I was in the Senate and there was a woman who was beaten at the Mall of America because she had a headdress on, and I went to her and you know, on behalf of the state of Minnesota, apologized to her and her family for what had happened because it was such an atrocity. So I mean, in my own personal way, I've tried to use what influence I have to try to remedy things that go wrong and try to make things better. But we're definitely got a lot more to do on that.
What do you think is the reason though? Like, is it because of racism?
I think again, part of the human race, one of the biggest problems is people see somebody who looks different or has a different religion or a different background, different language from them, and they make that person less of a human being than somebody who's like them. And all the great religions, Muhammad, Moses, Jesus, all the others, love thy neighbor as thyself. And someone said there's enough love in the world. I'm sorry, there's enough religion in the world to get everybody to hate one another. There's not enough religion to get everybody to love one another. Whether it's religion or whatever you want to call it, we need to be much more accepting. And people, it's hard to understand a lot of people, but the essence of it, one of the essences of democracy is that it's allowing for individual differences. I mean, in Saddam Hussein in Iraq, everybody who did exactly what the government wanted them to do, they were okay. If somebody, was a little bit different, disappeared. So, it's harder to say, well, I don't like this or I don't like that. Well, we all have our likes and dislikes.
No, but we don't have nothing to do with the government. We don't have nothing to do with the government. It states that it's freedom of religion and race.
Yeah, freedom of religion, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
It has nothing to do with the government.
What does? Everything is, freedom of religion is in the Constitution. Governments standing back so that people have freedom of religion is very much part of the Constitution of the United States. I take an oath of office to uphold the Constitution of Minnesota and the United States. That's where that's our vote.
You have time for one question, I think.
Well, give me a couple more. We got some great people.
I'm from Byron, and I'm just curious what do you do to make sure small towns still get their voices heard?
Well, you're being heard. Everybody has a voice and everybody has a vote. And the one thing about election day is that every vote counts the same. Every vote counts one. Your vote counts one. My vote counts one. His vote counts one. Some people say, well, I'm not going to vote. My vote doesn't count. I say, well, your vote counts one. Like, how many do you think your vote should count? Should it count 10? Should it count 1,000? So, that's how you get your voice heard. You get involved. Involved in campaigns, get involved in civic activities, and it's the involved people whose voices are louder than others. Yeah.
What is one thing that you want me to accomplish before you get done?
I want to, the bullying one would be a great one, but I want to improve the quality of education in Minnesota for everybody, because that's our future. Yes, well, you had one, who hasn't asked one? You asked one. You didn't know, you didn't.
We met with a representative earlier this morning, and she made it seem like the $50 that increase per student was actually paying back money that had been borrowed. Can you clarify?
Well, I wanted to raise income taxes on the wealthiest 2% of Minnesotans, which would have raised $1.5 billion for this 2 years. And then we would have had to borrow another $750 million from the schools, and we would have to borrow another $750 million from the future with the tobacco bonds. So I disagreed with that approach. But the fact is, the $50, delaying the school shift, as it's called, means that the state delays more of the payment on the timetable than it promised the schools. They get the money, it's just going to get it 3 or 4 months later. So then some school districts have to borrow money during that time. So the one additional cost to the schools is the additional interest they have to pay on the money they borrow. And the $50 per year of increase is much greater than that for everybody.
Are you willing to raise income taxes?
Oh, yes. I just don't have the votes in the legislature, but I'll come back next year and try to raise Well, there's always a tension when, one level of government is providing part of the money, and they say, well, it's our, we're providing the money, so we should be able to have some rules or mandates, and mayors chafe at that, as well as school boards, and state government, we chafe at the federal government, who sends us money and says, you've got to do it this way, you can't do it that way. So it's part of how, and that's, again, you talk about government, why people get confused by it all, is because there's so many levels of government, and there's so many different functions that, so working those things out, but, in general, we work them out, and I don't think that's the biggest problem we have with that is we have too many levels of government all dealing with the same thing, but I think, the school board has a legitimate point of view, they're the ones closest to it, they gotta make the hard decisions, and so, I said we want our state board of education to be an ally with the school boards, not an adversary.
Students, the governor,
Okay,
go ahead.
good?
The governor's been more than generous with
Oh, I
his
got
time.
one more. Fun.
With the next presidential election, what do you base your voting on?
Who I think will be the best leader for the future of our country.
Thanks very much.
You guys are just so amazingly well informed.
We got just a minute to tell us about your dogs. How are they doing?
Dogs, I have two Wanamingo on the way down to Rochester, the town of Wanamingo, and she's 14 months old. She's an old black German Shepherd, and I got a little brother named Casca, who's 6 months old today, and weighs about 4 tons. So. And they're best of friends. They fight over everything, anything that's a bone or a toy. And one has a mouth, the other, and they're going, one on the stairs, whatever. That's their idea. That means playing well together. I guess.
Well, thank you again for your time.